I want to start out with just a little bit of audience participation. I'll start. Knock, knock.
Yeah.
Kids' digital entertainment.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's stating the obvious right now to note that kids have almost infinite ways in which they can consume content, and that their favorite brands are being consumed in a lot of different ways, and you'll see on a subsequent slide exactly how many. Moreover, our research, and I think pretty much everyone else's at this point, is showing that kids are increasingly concentrating their time on tablets. And so there aren't just myriad ways to consume, but they all are competing against each other directly now. Anything that you create for kids that works on a tablet is just a home button away from everything. Games, books, video, communication, exploration, learning, and more. Now the good news about that is, if you're lucky enough to be one of their favorites, kids engage more deeply than ever with their favorite brands, and they will follow you, they will chase you across platforms, consume your content voraciously. They're burning through content at a rate we've never seen before, and they'll share it with others. So yes, as they say, content is king, but with all these options available, you need to make sure that kids know how to find your content, because without discovery, it's Game of Thrones and you are Joffrey. And if that doesn't work, it's because I'm not a Game of Thrones viewer, just So how hard has it gotten? Dubit's research in the US says that more than 60% of kids are often or sometimes frustrated trying to find content they want. There are two potential explanations here, and each one presents really a different opportunity for you. Either kids don't know what they're looking for, or they can't find what they're looking for. So how can we help kids either know what's out there, or how can we make our content more discoverable? Here comes the, this is, okay. Let me go forward one, and here we go. My slide's out of order here. Here's the one commercial for the moment. The data that I'm talking about today comes from Dubit Trending, which is our quarterly survey of 1,000 families in the US, 1,000 families in the UK, and then each quarter we do one other special country. So first quarter of this year was Turkey, second quarter of this year was Brazil, third quarter I think we're doing both Malaysia and Australia. And we also have one special focus each time. So in the second quarter we were looking at apps and such. In the third quarter we're going to be looking at print and how kids are consuming print. What we're looking at is in-depth insights into the media and entertainment consumption of kids and young teens, 2 to 15, devices, uses, favorite brands, and trying to use that in a way that leads content creators and IP owners to know what kids want, and marketers and buyers to know how to engage an audience. Happy to provide you with more information about Dubit Trending, but for the moment, commercial over. Let's move on to some of the 4 major developments that we see as most affecting discovery today. Sometimes they're aiding discovery, sometimes they are challenging it. Fragmentation and concentration, this is almost a conundrum. The very device that is concentrating kids' use, as I talked about before, they're focusing on the tablet, is fragmenting their content. You see a lot of cross-association of kids' brands, and you'll see that in some subsequent slides of how they're in many different places on the tablet. And you have to know where to go and look, what platform or genre kids most associate the brand with. Descheduling. No longer being locked into a schedule is great for kids who are pursuing their own passions, but it also takes away the traditional primary means of discovery, and that's predictability. Predictability can still work. There's a wonderful story in this past week, and predictability still does work. A wonderful story in this past week of ABC3, the Australian public broadcaster's children's channel, that took Curious George out of their schedule at 6 p.m. and got flooded with letters from parents and photographs of crying children that they couldn't find their Curious George. So sometimes kids are, we're still seeing a lot of live television viewing at the time of broadcast. But things are becoming overall less predictable. And Dubit is looking at, at something new that we're calling emotional scheduling. Ways of marketing and distributing your content so that it makes it prominent, it makes it top of mind for kids or for parents at those times of day when kids and families' moods and moments make it most salient to them. Emotional scheduling. Rise of social. More with older kids, but you'll see in some of our slides that even younger kids are using social media even before they're necessarily supposed to. That's not always clarifying communication. A lot of times it fragments information about your brand, but it is among their preferred methods of sharing their passion. So if you want kids to share, not just discover and consume, social media is going to be key to your approach. And then finally, the lowered barriers to creating content, the democratization of production that's cluttering the landscape, but also bringing new avenues. You know, the one thing I heard Bjorn say this morning that I'm not sure I agree with is that it's just going right out of my head. That you don't see Minecraft videos on traditional channels because they're not considered high quality. I think it more has to do with what people feel are kids' expectations about what they expect from different platforms. That they would look at a Minecraft video on a Nickelodeon and say, no, that's wrong, that doesn't belong here. But that if you could find a way to license, edit, and package Minecraft videos into a more Nick-looking show or a more Disney-looking show, that actually they would probably be quite interested in it. So let me go back to the fragmentation question for just a minute. This is, what you're seeing here is kids' share of time as reported over the last 2 waves of our tracker. You can see the television, that's as a device. It's not necessarily live television. It's using the big screen in the living room, or the smaller screens in their bedrooms, but still what they consider as television, still occupies the plurality of kids' media time. But the tablets and smartphones are catching up fast. And taken together, tablets and smartphones together, mobile is starting to dominate. Remember that this is a device slide, and so it doesn't say what they're doing with the technologies. And some of that, obviously, some of that time you're seeing there is obviously dual screen overlap. By the way, I'm throwing out a lot of slides and statistics now. I'm happy to share my slides afterwards, so don't worry that you need to get all this. I want to look at a couple ways for discovery and that we are seeing right now. Number one, there's the possibility of exploring new genres. What you're seeing here is preferred genres of entertainment among kids, and this cuts across 2 to 15 here. What you're seeing there are the 2 waves of the tracker, first quarter and second quarter. Take a look, I just spotlighted horror there. Now, 2 data points doesn't necessarily constitute a trend, but given the popularity right now of Five Nights at Freddy's, that's something that we're looking at as a possible growing genre among kids. And we're seeing other titles as well that are entering into that and starting to play a role in kids' lives. So looking at tracking genre trends and looking at appealing to those may be one way to aid discovery. 2 is be cross-platform, but be careful. This is one of my favorite slides in this whole deck. These are the top 10 brands that are mentioned freely, open-ended by kids across the US sample. And the colors are the different platforms where they typically encounter, watch, or play with those brands. We've got rich data as well on the crossover points, the platforms where kids first discover a brand, and then how they expand, the sort of progress that they use to expand into that brand's world, and which platforms they then like best, which ones are their favorites for consuming a particular brand. But this is the one that just shows, here are all the places that kids say they encounter these brands. What this says to me is you need to plan from the start for your world, your characters, to work for cross-platform, but that also it's very easy to look at this and say, I've got to be everywhere. I can't afford to miss any opportunity, to miss any kid, and to spend way too much on trying to be everywhere at once. So we urge caution that you start with 1 or 2 platforms that are most salient to your brand, your characters, your world, and then look later at expanding into the others. Know how your target audience discovers. This is a chart of the many ways in which kids tell us that they discover new brands or new content. And as you look at this, One thing that I believe Dubit should be exploring with this tracking survey is conversion of different platforms. It's one thing to say how they hear about new content, which platforms they hear about new content. It's quite another to figure out which ones drive follow-up, which ones, whether that's watching, whether they hear about it, and then actually follow through and watch, download it, purchase. You'll see this agrees very much, actually, I think, with what Mike was saying, with the exception of that television column over to the left. I think the difference between the mobile gaming world specifically and the world that we're looking at is that with the broader range, television as well as toys, as well as books and things, that they are seeing things, getting things through television as well.
David, is this still 2 to 15? What age range is this?
This is the full 2 to 15. Here, very timely question, because here you see it broken down by age. And one of the things that this says to me is tried, true, and trusted. Don't discount television advertising. I know it's expensive, and also don't discount the role of parents, even in kids older than that first 2 to 4 year old age group. You can see that parents, getting information from parents kind of clusters there. Obviously the 2 to 4s are primarily hearing about new brands through their parents, and it's parents that are answering this survey for them, but parents remain among the top sources even into later years. Capture the early adopters. You can see in this chart that those who come to a brand early share their passion for it far more than those in the overall survey population. And I think interestingly, it looks like sharing on a daily or weekly basis peaks around the age of 8 to 10 in our sample, which is it really makes sense, because that's a time when divergence of personal interests is really taking a hold, when mastery of something is a huge motivator for that 8 to 10 year old age group, where unique knowledge about something is a real source of pride for kids, knowing something on the playground before your friends know it, and where many kids are starting to get their own mobile devices. So again, it makes sense for them to adopt things on their own earlier on. I'm going to touch just briefly on where they're sharing with others about entertainment brands and titles. The top 2 places, not surprisingly, face-to-face, whether in schoolyard or outside of school. And these sort of trade off their primacy depending on age. Obviously the 2 to 4 year old age group is sharing face-to-face outside of school because they're either in preschool or not yet in school. But again, it's the tried and true that tops the list here. And then after that face-to-face sharing, then you start to get into the next half dozen, as you'll see, our social media. And Facebook is in the top 3 across all age groups, even the 2 to 4, which says to me that there's a lot of parental sharing about what kids like, and also that kids are helping their kids get onto, or that adults are helping their kids get onto Facebook at an earlier age than they're necessarily supposed to be. So finally, I want to turn to some of the roots of opportunity, from the roots of opportunity for discovery and sharing, to some critical moments for a brand in capturing its intended audience. This chart shows the flow of brand adoptions rise and fall from the brand innovators to the early adopters to the early majority and through to ubiquity. And you can see that it is, those are the age groups there that are, I'm afraid that, no, it is up in the top there, the key is there as well, and again, I'm happy to share. So we see 4 critical moments in building or sustaining a brand. The first is drawing in the innovators, capturing that first group to find your brand, getting your IP to catch a spark among the very choosy, very conscribed circle of real influencers. The second is getting that first small wave to be noticed by the early adopters who aren't really as much risk takers, but they want to be ahead of the curve. They don't want to be left behind, but they're not really ready to be too far out there. Third is maintaining momentum long enough with those early adopters to get the mass market going, the mass audience acceptance. And then fourth is, how do you avoid being a flash in the pan? How do you build a lasting brand instead of something that just lasts a short time? We've got a chart that I think outlines some of the possibilities for that, the methods that brands have used to do this in the past, and how those methods have either changed entirely, how they've evolved, or how they've remained valid. And only got time to spotlight a few, but you're welcome to spend more time with us. The earliest arrivers, the innovators and the early adopters are always going to be the hardest to reach. They rely on fairly small, closed communities for discovery. They're risk takers. They want to be the influencers, not feel like someone else is trying to influence them. And like many things, over time, they've moved from niche print publications primarily to online forums, but that are still fairly conscribed and closed online forums. If you want your brand to make that pivot from there to catching hold and getting widespread but still early adoption, it's got to have a certain sense of safety in numbers, but it still has to feel cool. Celebrity use or endorsement, if it feels authentic, that's one of the key things, can help. And I'm sure you've all been reading the articles recently about how today's youth are turning to an entirely new set of celebrities. This may be the biggest shift in this entire chart, is that the displacement of movie and television stars of the past with today's YouTube influencers and other and reality show influencers, that they're listening to a whole new set of voices right now. And then if you want to make it into the pantheon of established long-running brands, you need to regularly refresh your content, and you need your social media platforms really to take hold. So here it helps to, in the sort of classic, not a word I often use, but transmedia sense, this is where it really helps to engage your community as your collaborators, as your brand ambassadors, and open up your IP a little bit for them to contribute as well. Those are some of the things that we've been seeing. I am here for the whole 2 days. The two folks on top are our heads of research, the ones who are responsible for Dubit trending. They'll be happy to talk to you about the full set of data that's in there and how to get hold of it. I'm happy to talk to you about all the work that Dubit is doing and about ways that we might connect. Thank you much.